these are your income statement. So this year, the total support revenue for the LDC of 1.1 million, and I'm going to try to minimize that there if it's easier. And there's an increase this year because the total administrative fee paid from the IDA to the LDC was paid in full this year as opposed to in kind last year. So that's why you see the increase up to 600,000. And then down below, we had a slight decrease in expenses. We ended the year with just over a little over $1 million for expenses. That was down about 160,000 or 13%. In the previous year, we had some bad debt expense. So the end of the year with a change in net assets or net income of about $115,000 compared to a negative 417,000 in the previous year. Let's see if I can flip this screen. There. On this next page, this is the statement of functional expenses for not-for-profit organizations, which the LDC is. You have to present a statement of functional expenses. What it is, it's detailing all of your program services and your general administrative costs, and then you have to also disclose your natural categories of expenses. So as you can see, there's variations throughout the year. A slight increase in salaries and employee benefits of about 6%. Here's that bad debt expense that we had last year for one of the loans, and this year we did not have a similar bad debt expense. Fluctuations are varied. What we're seeing right now, across the board with not-for-profit organizations, we're seeing a decrease in advertising and promotion. Event sponsorships aren't always taking place at this point. And then there's a decrease in travel and training and conferences. So again, we're seeing that throughout the not-for-profit world. And then I'm going to flip this back to here's your statement of cash flows. And what this is, this statement's a required statement, and it discloses what your change in cash was for the year. Your cash decreased by 80,000 during the year. There was a new loan program for the LDC that was for the COVID-19 emergency loans that's received a new loan originations here. Next, we move into the notes to the financial statements on page 7. There were some new accounting pronouncements this year that's disclosed on pages 8 and 9. Basically, for all not-for-profit organizations, and for-profits as well. There was a new revenue recognition that was issued in 2019, and it really had minimal effect on the LDC, the way you're recording your revenue. So down below, there was also another accounting pronouncement issued clarifying the scope of how contributions are recognized. Again, minimal effect. Everything was being recorded already in accordance with these new accounting standards. And that note continues on to the next page, and it just discloses your various support. Over on page 9, we have, and I'm on page 9 right now. So we also disclose that your loans receivable and allowance for loan losses, basically you're using the simple interest method on principal amounts outstanding. And then it continues on with the next page. Down below on page 11. So on page 11, we have underneath the comparative financial information, we have the date of management's review. So we reviewed for subsequent events between September 30th and November 25th. What we've disclosed in all of our financials is a very general note on the effect of COVID-19 on our not-for-profit organizations. You'll see that in a moment in note 10. And then we move into the notes, the loans receivable note, and here you can see the new COVID-19 emergency loan program that was instituted in 2020. And then we have information, more detailed information on page 12. I'm pleased to report that all of those loans are current. You'll see that at the bottom of page 12. And if we move over to page 15, here is the note on concentration of credit risk. So all of your money in your local banks are either insured by the FDIC or it's collateralized. So that's very important to make sure all your cash is insured or collateralized at the end of the year. Last year, we had a new note in the financial statements on page 16. And what that was a liquidity note. That was the first time we saw it last year, because last year there was a new accounting pronouncement. So with the liquidity note, we disclose what your financial assets are at the end of the year and what you have available to meet cash needs over the next year. You have about 2.7 million of available financial assets to meet your expenditures in 2021. And your total expenditures run about 1 to 1.2 billion. So this is a very positive note to have in your financial statements, because you have adequate financial assets to meet those operational needs. And then down below under note 10 is subsequent events. Again, this note is a very general type note that the AICPA, that's the governing body that dictates how we present financial statements. And they suggested that we just put a note in here that basically says that, due to the COVID-19 outbreak, there's disruption to be expected. At this point, you can't really estimate what that negative impact would be on any organization. So that concludes the note part of the financial statements. And then the last part of the financial statements for the Local Development Corporation is the Yellow Book report. This is the independent auditor's report on internal control and compliance in accordance with government auditing standards. This is required by the Authority Budget Office, and I'm pleased to report we did not have any significant deficiencies. We did not have any compliance findings, and there is not an opinion issued with this report, but this is the opportunity, if there were material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, they would be reported here. So again, please report none of those types of items. And then last, if you had the paper copies of the financial statements, you would see a letter just attached in the back. It's not bounded with the financial statements. This is a communication letter. And this is the letter where we communicate, whether or not we that you implemented any new accounting pronouncements, which you did. You implemented the new revenue recognition. And then here's the opportunity, if you had some material adjustments to your financial statements, we would report them here. And you did not have any material adjustments. Actually, for the LDC, you did not have any adjusted entries. So, what that really says is your internal reports that you receive, they're mirroring your external financial statements. So when you have an audit and you have an organization that has multiple journal entries, then your internal reporting compared to your external reporting may fluctuate quite a bit. So again, please report that should mirror very closely. There were any disagreements with management throughout the year. So that concludes the LDC financial statements. Are there any questions on the Local Development Corporation?
We have, hold on a second. Sorry, Robert. Go ahead.
Okay, considering the investment climate and just the climate in general, can you ask your opinion, like all of our agencies do in comparison to say other clients, or maybe not specifically other clients, but like, do you fare well based on your opinion of what you see?
Yes, going back to that liquidity, Marshall, should I decrease my volume?
I don't know if we're gonna be able to solve that issue right now.
Okay, I'll just, I'm gonna turn my volume down. Can you still hear me? Okay, good. I'm gonna leave my volume down. Okay, so, the liquidity note that I just presented a few moments ago, note 9. So that's a real indicator of how well you're doing, because, with the pandemic and everything that we've seen, that note, doesn't always look as, positive as it does for the local development corporation. You know, there might be less financial assets available, you know, it's clear that you have enough, financial assets in place to meet those operational needs in 2021 based on that liquidity note. Is that,
The microphone on possibly?
I do,
Could you turn that on?
sure. Okay, there.
That might solve
Okay. Any other questions for Liz? Can I get a motion in a second to accept our LDC audit?
I'll make a motion.
So move, Lisa.
All in favor, aye? Opposed? Motion carries, thank you. We're gonna preempt the LDC meeting and let's go ahead with the LDCIDA audit.
Sure. So I am going to close this one and then, share my screen. All right, this should be up on everyone's screen. Can everyone see this? Okay. So now here's the IDA financial statements. These are a little bit longer, because the IDA also includes the Jefferson County Local Development Corporation and the JCCFDC Corporation as well. So if you turn to the independent auditor's report, again, this is the report that we issue, and we disclose that management is responsible for the financial statements for the preparation and fair presentation, and our responsibility is to express an opinion on the financial statements. And then on page 2, you see an opinion. We issued an unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statements. Now, these financial statements are presented in accordance with GASB, that's Governmental Accounting Standards, because this is a government agency as compared to the Local Development Corporation, which is considered a not-for-profit organization. So just a slightly different presentation here. One of the things that you're going to see in your financial statements on pages 4 through 15 is the management's discussion and analysis. I won't go through this section. This provides an overview of highlights of your financial statements, and also here is an opportunity for management to provide some information as well, and I encourage you to read this section of the financial statements. Important to note here that this is one of the required part of financial statements. In order to issue that clean, unmodified opinion, you have to have certain components. You need the management's discussion and analysis, and obviously the financial statements themselves and all of the notes. So if you turn to page 16, here's the first financial statement for the IDA. And again, this is a combined statement. You'll see on pages 36 to 41, we have all the detail of all the components that are presented in the IDA financial statements. So basically, you ended the year on your statement of net position with $10.8 billion, and most of those assets are either cash, $2.8 billion of unrestricted and $4.9 billion of restricted, and then you have your unrestricted and restricted loans receivable and your capital assets. This was a slight decrease from last year. Last year, you were about $11.2 million. There was some cash expended. Actually, you also had that new COVID-19 program this year. The liabilities, total liabilities of $338,000. Last year, they were about $400,000. So very comparable. And then you come down to your difference, which is your net position of $10.5 million. Part of that is your net investment in your capital assets of $1.5 million. The other is $4.8 billion that's restricted. That's your net assets restricted for loan programs, and then your unrestricted net assets of $4.2 billion. Following on the next page, here's your combined statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in that position. For the year ended September 30th, 2020, you have total operating revenues of 1.2 million. Last year you had about $1 million. There was a slight increase in operating revenues. And then corresponding down below, you ended the year with 1.6 million in total operating expenses. Last year about 1.5 million. So the expenses and the revenues are very comparable. And down below, you had a total change between your net position at the beginning of the year of 10.8 million down to about 10.5 million, or a negative change of $316,000. In the governmental type statements, we also present a statement of cash flows. So there was a change in cash overall. The change in cash, sorry about that. The change in cash was a decrease of about 294,000. And as you'll see up above here, most of that's in your operations. You have cash received coming in and then cash being paid out for various supplies, salaries, projects, and then your loan originations. That increased this year, the loan originations due to having the new COVID-19 emergency loans. And then if you continue on to page 20, here starts the notes to the financial statements. For governmental entities, there weren't any new accounting policies or new GASB standards. They were all pushed back a year because of the pandemic. So, you know, basically your note one was very similar to your previous year. No material changes. And again, this is a blended component unit financial statement, meaning that you have the IDA, you have the local development corporation, and you have Jefferson County Civic Facility Corporation, all combined, reported in these financial statements. And again, all the details are in pages 36 to 41. You take all of the individual components, combine them to arrive at this combined financial statement. Over on page 24, at the bottom of the page, we have another management review note here. So again, we review all your financial information through the date of the financial statements for any subsequent events. And we'll be disclosing again in this financial statement that very general note on COVID-19 and note 14. On the next page, we have a note 2. This is your concentration of credit risk. All of your money here at the IDA is also either insured by the FDIC or collateralized by the bank, or excuse me, collateralized by pledging institutions with the banks. And then down below, we start the disclosures for your loans receivable. This will include your loans receivable for your programs and the local development corporation. You can see that there's the revolving loan and the emergency loan program. And here's your receivables for all your other programs, your revolving loan, micro enterprise, and city loan. On the next page, we have descriptions of those programs. And then following on page 27, we have more descriptions of the details of the various revolving loan programs. And then if you continue on to page 29, we have here at the bottom of page 29, we disclose your aging of your receivables. So here, most of your loans are current. There's one small one that's slightly past due. You know, that's good to see that all of your receivables are on the current status. Following on the next page, on page 30, we have a detail of what your restricted assets are. This is the restricted cash in your various accounts, in your loan programs, and your capital improvement reserve. And then following over on page 32, we have the detail of what your capital assets are. And again, this is most of your increase was due to the record storage grant program. We had a grant received for record storage, and then your depreciation runs about $99,000. Following on to page 35, you have, we have that final subsequent event note. So here it's, again, very general note that, due to COVID-19, we can't determine at this time, whether there's any negative impact on operating results for an organization. And then including with the following pages, these are all your supplementary schedules. These are good because you can see all the details from your IDA and your component units. You have your local development corporation and the JCC FTC. So you have a combining balance sheet here, a statement of fund net position, and a combining statement of revenues and expenses for all of the different component items. And we've also included the details for the local development corporation and the JCC FTC. Again, for the balance sheet and the statement of that fund position and the income statement. And also with these sets of financial statements, if you turn to page 42, this is the yellow book report again. So whenever you have an agency that's reporting to the New York State Authority Budget Office, you have to include a yellow book report that we refer to it as. It's an internal control report in accordance with government auditing standards, and this is an opportunity, again, it's not an opinion report, but it's an opportunity if there were any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses or compliance findings, they would be reported here. We do not have any of those types of items to report. And then following that, if you have a paper copy in front of you, before we get to that part, there's one last report. It's the 2020 investment report. A couple of years ago, the Authority Budget Office asked if we would put these in our IDA type financial statements. So if you had investments in a brokerage firm, you would report another report here in this set of financial statements. You don't have any investments to those types of firms, so there's nothing to report in the 2020 investment report. And then following that, just slid in the back of the financial statements with a stapled copy of the communication letter. Again, it's very similar to the local development corporation. This is the letter where we disclose whether or not you adopted any new accounting policies, and for the IDA, there were any new accounting policies to adopt because those governmental accounting standards boards have pushed those back another year. The impact on the IDA next year for those governmental accounting standards, new announcements would be very minimal for the IDA as well. So I think over the next 2 years, probably in 2022, we'll start seeing some more new accounting announcements that might affect or change the financial statements, but for right now, they're will be minimal effects. And then this this letter here goes on to disclose whether there were any material adjustments. There were any material adjusted entries for the IDA as well. So what that tells you again is your internal reporting is reflective of your external reporting, that you're not having a significant amount of adjusting entries in your audit. So a job well done by Bio and Joy and Peggy and all the staff here at Don and the board. You guys do a great job, and it's reflective in your financial statements. I don't have anything else on the letter or financial statements unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Liz?
I'll move to approve the financial report.
Let's hold off on that, Paul, until the IDA meeting. Thanks. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
By the way, a compliment to Liz and the crew from Bowers. They're always a pleasure to do business with. And to our venerable CFO Lyle, he makes all these nice reports possible by his work.
Does.
We appreciate it, seriously.
Well, I've been doing this for a long time, well over 60 years, and it was certainly a different audit this year, but it was probably the smoothest audit that I've ever been involved with. It was no trouble. We sent things back and forth. Andrew was great to work with, and so is Liz. So it really makes my job easy.
Makes you know you're happy because it's still working.
Well, we had, fortunately, by the time we got to the IDA audit, which is a September 30th year end at the local development corporation, we had plenty of practice since March. Because when the pandemic hit, we had to make a decision. We weren't going to go to all of our clients' offices, and then, we decided to work just in our home office or at home. So we've had probably about, I would say 30 to 40 repetitions before, September. So that was good. So hopefully that's the smooth transition. So thank you.
Very good, thank you.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Moving on, treasurer's report, Rob?
Okay, reviewing, page 29 report packet. So 96,001 is break even. Achievement, we were right at about 107,000. Collection coming in, so this account can balance itself by the end of the year. So that's, we're good position on the revenue side, operating expense side. Again, it was a zero-sum budget, so 96,000 a month is break-even achievement, and we're spending about 75,000 a month, so significantly better, which shows that just under 64,000 net income over expenditures year to date. And again, for note, last year we had about $170,000 surplus chasing out some over expenditure was also in the agency. So we're in a good position there. Pages 30, 31, 32 are the snapshots of our program review. You'll see page 33 of our balance sheet. Quick assets are down 28,000 prior month. Receivables down 22,000 prior month. So current assets are down about 42,000 prior month. Total assets are down just under 22,000 prior month. Under liabilities, you'll see most of it are grants. As they get spent, they move up, they kind of move up to the balance sheet. So right now, total liabilities have decreased 53,000 as I said, mostly because of the grant spending. Total capital is up a little over 31,000. Page 34 of your packet, show our major program. I guess just a question, Lyle, there's no change in the status that's shown during each of your programs. That's still accurate.
I couldn't hear him.
He wants to know if the report that we're looking at is still accurate, Lyle.
Yes, it is.
34.
Yes.
The answer, Rob, is yes.
Okay, I know things can change quickly between board and report issues and such. Okay, so that's page 34. I guess just page 42 to know, I'm assuming there's one due of these COVID grant loans issued to one or so. It looks like, so I guess those are still coming in slowly but surely. And on page 44 of our packet, there was a fairly large expenditure where they did figure out later on, this case Sickler Murphy is a consultant for our records management. So you'll see a $22,400 expenditure for using some of the grant money and some of the great work that was done to get the records management in place. I know there's a resolution later, but Unless I'm wrong, that's what it appears to be the cost for.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's the treasurer's report for the LDC. I would make a motion to accept it as I presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Any other questions? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Carries. Thank you. Committee reports, alternative energy, Bill?
Okay, this last Tuesday, we had a meeting, and we went through all of the, I'll take just a couple minutes, we'll run down through these, the whole board, and Paul jump in here and kind of, get any information, but NextAmp has, two projects, Adams Renewable, the Black River projects. These are both complete. The closing documents, I believe, are complete. I'm not sure if they have been signed, but anyhow, those two projects are basically complete. We went on, there's two projects in Champion and one in Clayton. And help me here, Paul, the two in Champion, those names, that name change, that was Omni initially. Or Matt, if you can help, those two.
I think they're GSPP now, if I'm not correctly, and we've approved those, but they haven't closed yet, correct, Don?
Yeah, I think, though, Bill is referring to the AMP, what ended up being the AMP energy.
I wasn't sure, these are the two from Champion that the lawyers are working on because of, the town supervisor had some, questions about. They were on the, I think, project to begin with.
That's correct. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Bill. I did, mention to Paul, he had, Paul had indicated, yesterday, or whenever we had that meeting, that, he asked me to, reach out to the supervisor in Champion, which I did. And, we have an update on those projects. They're moving, but there's still a couple of issues the town needs to, resolve primarily with respect to their decommissioning plan. One has a plan, but it is, they're insisting on a bond. And the other one has neither a plan nor the bond, but eventually those are expected to be worked out. That's the latest I have on those.
Okay, and that project in Clayton, same state.
I got a call from the supervisor yesterday. I was on a conference call. I did not, frankly, was unable to make connection with him, so I'm not sure. We may have an issue there, Bill. I just, it's in progress, so I don't.
Just so the whole board knows where we're at with these projects. Probably everybody remembers Dave Norva. He started a project in the town line. I believe that has been sold to a company called Verdant. They're proceeding with that. But again, we're waiting to hear from them. There's still some discussion from the school here online about that project, and we really don't know any more about it, but that's still in the back burner. We also have 6 new projects, US Light Energy, and 4 of those are in Philly and 2 of them are in.
Jim.
And there's some issues about this project that the board needs to discuss. I'll let you decide where we should be talking about these and what meeting. But there are some issues here that the board probably should discuss. We also talked about loan review being brought back in to our discussions. I believe the Energy Committee's suggestion is to make sure we get loan review back in. Either we can look at these concurrently, or we'll figure out how to get that process going again, but that was discussed. Sales tax, issue was, discussed again, and, we had a further clarification from that about that issue. I believe we're all set on it now. I think that's about it. Let's, Paul, or I don't think John's on, but is there anything else, Paul?
No, I think the real issues are only on 4 of the 6 projects of US Light Energy.
Okay.
And, you know, in our meeting, Dave and John both brought up some valid issues to discuss. And I guess we'll leave it to Dave, whether we do it in the LBC or the IDA, on what our desire is for the board. I sent an email out to everyone. I think we need to get a temperature on the board before we make a decision on how to proceed.
I agree, and I think that those are, have any votes or anything, we really need to do that at the IDA meeting.
Correct. Okay. That's my report, unless somebody's got a question.
Thanks, Bill. Building and grounds. Yeah?
Okay, building and grounds, we continue to work on the white box concept for a price for potential tenant for Carlson Street. And also, Don met with Denise over a couple concerns about going forward and we have some answers to those concerns, and I'll actually turn it over to Don so he can update everybody.
Thanks, yeah, this, as you can imagine, Mr. Zemback and I, and Marge have been up to our proverbial Easter because this is a very complicated project we're looking at here. The end result of several discussions is, I think this morning, the boards will be asked to consider a ground lease, which essentially allows the Y to occupy, basically, we'll make it round numbers, 3/4 of the building, the Arthur Street building we're in. That ground lease has been worked on over several weeks. Joe Russell will tell you more about the actual lease itself when he has an opportunity to do so. So that ground lease will put the Y essentially in as the lesser of our property here, and they can really get to work on designing, developing, and so on the project, which is expected here. The other aspect, of course, is we have a tenant for the remaining space, originally thought to be 14,500 square feet. You may remember that that number may change as the design of the facility becomes more clear. If we end up with less than the 14,500 square feet we originally thought, I've asked the Y and our partners to consider how we, being the IDA, is compensated for that change. And we have some ideas which may not necessarily mean an exchange of money, but nonetheless, it's a matter of all of us working together, which indeed we are. We continue to work on the white box concept, which the board suggested, or the committee, I guess, Building and Grounds suggested. I think we zeroed in on the concept pretty well. Now we got to plug in some very specific numbers. I've taken a shot at it. I'm frankly not yet comfortable because there's so many unknowns. You know, it's really difficult to know exactly what we're dealing with here. So we'll continue to refine that. I would say that things are progressing. There are some concerns that we have. I won't share those at the moment. We'll work our way through that. The good news is everyone is very, very much anxious to get this project designed and built and becoming a part of our community. So Mr. Zemback has been spending a lot of time on it. And I think perhaps I have, and I know Marsh and others on staff have. So we're hopeful that things will resolve itself very quickly. One other observation, Kent, I have suggested and will suggest to the board that we hire essentially a watchdog firm to oversee what's happening in the construction elements, primarily construction elements going forward. And I'll explain in greater detail why I would like to have that considered. And I've asked Albert G. Courier to put together a proposal wherein they can act as our watchdog and essentially control over what's going on here. Because at one point, as you may remember, our posture as a board was we were going to sell this facility to the Y and to some other entity and then walk away. Well, unfortunately, the way it's worked out now, you're going to be a landlord for 30 years. And so we want to make very, very sure that whatever it is that is accomplished, designed, and developed is not going to come back to bite us at some point in the future. So the good news, and it is good news, this is progressing. Our relationship with the Y, with BCA, our other potential client, Washington Street Properties, who has other influences in the building. All of us are working collectively to try to find a solution, and that makes it easier. Dave, did I miss anything? No.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of unknowns yet as they look at the structural issues, they're looking at code issues and such like that, so they'll know more later about what those the time frame and the final design and use of space.
I think that's a good idea, Don, going to a professional third party, in this case, and it may be another engineering firm, maybe an arbitrator in this project. There's so many moving pieces in this whole construction phase for us to hire an employee and be the credible source to bring these parties together. I think it's going to be a real challenge. Go to the outside firm, engineering, they've got the expertise, they bring parties together. I think it'll be I recommend it.
Thanks, Ed. I see without that, it'll be a challenge because we do have competing interests, even though the overarching interest is get the project built. There will be questions about where this wall should go and how that impacts carpet savings and lawn downstairs and, all these things. And so we need someone to kind of be in our corner, arbitrate, if you will, provide good advice to this board. At some point, you're going to be making decisions, I think, going forward, and you want the best advice in this instance that you can get. And so I am hoping that the folks at Albert G. who have quite a bit of experience with this building, they've worked with us on this building a number of times, so they understand exactly what we have here. And I think that.
So don't we have is there a time frame that this project has to be completed for the federal?
Yeah, August of 2022, so the plan is construction will start June or July next summer, and then be finished by August following.
So quick coming time frame. You see, August of 22 is what the amount of construction, amount of work that's got to be done. This ain't got to move.
Well, that's part of what we're considering here is what could possibly slow down or stop the process, making it in today's world impossible to meet the timing issues. So we're trying to avoid those, whatever they may be, and we've been looking carefully at the number of these, and there are a number that could sidetrack if we're not.
Third party have to come on that because if they don't meet the time frame, you're going to be stuck with a building that's partially constructed.
Exactly right, Joe. Exactly.
Don, can I ask a question, Don?
Of course, sure.
First, I think we've talked briefly in the past about a construction management firm, so I think it makes a lot of sense to have our own eyes on anything happening in the building we own. Just to make sure that we're getting the quality we expect in a building we have owned for 30 years. the corners aren't being cut. So I fully support the concept of hiring a construction management operation. Secondly, were you planning to ask for an executive session to discuss some of the financial numbers that we were sent the other day to further explain those?
I would certainly be happy to do that, Paul, if you want to, right at the moment, I'm sure best guesses, but I'd be happy to talk, to the board about what these considerations are at the moment, if you'd like. It certainly does deserve a greater explanation.
That would probably be appropriate.
Yeah, we can do that in IDA.
Well, that'd be fine, but I think there's probably some LDC members that may want to hang around and be invited into that session.
Sure.
So that works for me at the IDA. So.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Governance.
Got governance committee met on Tuesday in Zoom. Paul and, I can't remember, the attendance sheet from Bill, yes. Okay. Yep. We reviewed our internal board evaluation, which is our judicial responsibility every year. Evaluation summaries in our packet for everyone to see. Overall, it was an improvement over last year. Any of the critiques that board members had, and I view it as a very positive summary. And there was a little discussion in the committee to either maybe have some additional discussion for the board to provide some input as a board. But then Paul suggested the idea with the oncoming new CEO that we give them a chance maybe to take a look at a couple of the critiques from the board, which really evolved around communication issues, and put forth some suggestions that he'd like to see, and we handle it in that manner, which I think is a good approach. So,
You could be honest and tell them that it's time to clean up the mess left by the.
Not at all,
CEO.
not at all,
And
not at all, not the case at all. So, good evaluation, improvement, and we're gonna make the best better, as other people say in other organizations, so.
It's clear the evaluations have shown significant improvement in the previous year.
Not that it was an issue from last year. Last year, we're being harsh on ourselves here. We as a board, we're trying to do our part too. So that's really kind of what we're critiquing is ourselves, not administration. So,
Exactly.
yep. So,
I would move acceptance of the governance committee's report on the annual evaluation.
outside of that,
Any further discussion?
I,
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Council reports. Jay?
Hello there, how you doing? Good. Good. I sent out an annual report for 2020 for our Ag Economic Development Program yesterday. So in the essence of time, because I know you're discussing a lot of things today, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I really don't have anything to update.
If I may make a comment, I would really encourage the board to read carefully the report that Jay put together. I think even those of us who sit on a daily basis and watch the activity going on are impressed when it's collected in that type of report. So you can look at all of the things that have been going on, and they are impactful in my personal view. I remember when I first came around, had nothing to do with me, but when I first came around, ag was always thought of as something as an add, a substandard. It was never really a priority in the economic development pecking order. And Jay, through his fine efforts supported by the board, have been able to turn that around, and now it is thought of as one of the most important economic development areas. And so please take a look at that report, and tip of the hat here to Jay and the folks who serve on his advisory boards for the kinds of work that they have done and the support that Ed and others here have given. Please do.
I just want to throw another recognition in that critique of Don's. Looking through the audit reports that we went through and assessing the agricultural program, we, the community, the county, this agency, is committing almost $200,000 every year for the development of the ag position, Jay's position. And there's no other county in the state of New York that is so dedicated and pledged to recognizing the importance of agriculture and putting the money where the mouth is, and creating real benefit. So the County Board of Legislators, with their funding cycle for us on furthering it on to Jay, kudos to all of us. It's nowhere else, really, in the country. There's very few places in the country where the county has put together this kind of a program.
There's no other county that has a J.
That may tell us something, but I don't know.
That was a 7.
Oh, very good, thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Manufacturing, Dave, do we have any?
No, I mean, obviously with the whole COVID thing, we really haven't done much of that event, but we are working something on a regional basis right now with other partners in other counties to do virtual workshops this spring. One on export assistance, what's available at the state federal level to assist with growing exports. And we're going to be talking to Jay, but there's this trade sector group, which ag is one of the trade sectors. We're going to bring in some leaders in the ag industry together to figure out how do we address the whole value add and improve that.
Thanks. Marketing, Marsh.
Just want to give you a quick update on our sign. We met out in the snow yesterday afternoon, which I thought was a really great meeting. With some guys from the town planning board, Jim Lawrence, Randy Voss, Tom Boxberger, and Bob Wormwood. It looks like we're going to be able to get the sign in under current zoning. So we're hoping to get the approval at next week's meeting and move forward. So very pleased about that. One other thing, we are moving forward with our website. Our vendor has all of the stuff on our side necessary, and they're doing their thing and expecting to have a draft sort of new look here in a week or so. So excited about that. It's been a crazy couple of weeks, and I guess that's about it for right now. If anybody has any questions, just give me a shout.
Thanks. Other finished business?
There's a companion piece to what our esteemed marketing folks have undertaken, and that is you'll be asked to visit a question about a purchase and sale agreement, which will allow us to put that sign in. So we'll get to that eventually. But Marsh has been doing a hell of a job trying to get that thing together.
Any unfinished business? We always say. Also, nothing. Okay. Under new business, we have on page 47, consider resolution number 12.03.2020.01 to adopt records management policies and procedures. I entertain a motion in a second on this resolution.
So moved. Second,
Go down.
Any discussion?
Just one quick question. I have one question about record destruction, Peggy. Have we identified, is our goal to get rid of everything that we don't need to keep?
we've already done the inventory clerks, that was part of their job when they were here. And if you want to stop by sometime and see, what's left, there's not much. So we kept everything for a very, very long time, and we are now in good shape, and we have a system in place.
Good. Well, I had to go through it when I was with the county, and the number of records we had maintained for years that there was no requirement was amazing. Just the space we saved, numerous file cabinets and stuff. That's all I had.
We just saved another forest, Paul, the amount of paper that has been recycled.
Okay. On resolution, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution carries. Thank you. And on page 62, we have resolution number 12.03.2020.02, and for the authorized signers for the Jefferson County Local Development Corporation. Entertain a motion and a second on that.
Lisa. I'll second that, Ken.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Anything else for the LDC?
No.
Motion to adjourn the LDC, please.
So
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you. With that, we'll call to order the Jefferson County Industrial Development Agency. This is our Thursday, December 3rd, board meeting, 2020. We've had our pledge of allegiance, privilege of the floor. Minutes, we all received our minutes from November 5th, and I have a motion to accept those, please.
Yes, Paul.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We went through our audit report with Bowers and Company earlier. Can I have a motion and a second to accept that report?
So moved, go down.
Second, Lisa.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Treasurer's report.
Page 56 of the packet. 109,500 per month would be a break even on a linear basis. We're actually achieving about 131,000 a month. We did just get some pilot payments in here in the current month, so those are reported. So right now, looks positive. On the expense side, again, a zero sum budget, 109,500 a month expenditure would be break even. We're only spending about 91,500 per month. Revenue, or expenditures is all 80,700 surplus. So bank balance sheet, page 57. Our quick assets are down about 535,000. Most of it is the pilot payment that was paid because of some money. The pilot checking kind of moved down on the balance sheet, so there's some movement of funds from one part of the sheet to the other. Our receivables are up 400,000 from our month, and the balance of miscellaneous stuff changed about 4,000. Total current assets are down 143,000 prior month. Total assets down 149,500 prior month. Total current liabilities are down to 280,000 that I mentioned for pilot checking, so it moved from the top to the bottom. In page 58 of your packet, total capital is up 137,800. Page 59 of your packet is a snapshot of the building you're sitting in. We've spent about 16,000 of real money year to date. And I know we're talking about this later, just as a reminder, we spent about 61,000 on electricity last year, and salaries were about 31,000 last year. We spent 370 in total, so those are some things that I know the staff, everyone's working hard to shelter us from paying those expenses, moving forward. Page 66 of your packet, page 67 and 68 are a snapshot of our current loan programs. They're all noted as current or under the moratorium we've granted as a board. And I guess, Lyle, if you can still hear me, hopefully, no change in any of these loan statuses?
No, not at the present time.
Okay, very good. I'd make a motion to accept the treasurer's report just presented.
Make a motion, do I have a second?
Nobody likes me.
Yes.
I'll second.
There we go.
Any further questions or discussion on the treasurer's report? On the motion, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Brad, loan review.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Dave. Page 69 of your packet, we met on a project that was put in front of us. Is essentially most of the money is coming from Watertown Savings Bank. I think she's still on. During the loan review, she was actually on the call. She indicated that Watertown Savings has gone through all the considerations. It looks like their piece will move forward. Our piece would have been contingent upon that. So it's a $40,000 microenterprise loan, 5% interest. We would be protecting 7 full-time equivalent hourly employees and 3 full-time equivalent salary positions. During loan review, there was a discussion about operating the first 6 months as Steve Mason's. Nobody is particularly golfing the next 6 months here in Watertown, particularly. So that was added into the resolution, which is different than what's in the loan review packet. There was some discussion from John Jennings, who's not on the call here. He asked some questions about looking at the snapshot of Willowbrook Enterprises. There were some losses in prior years, and he was just wondering about the liquidity and what have you of going forward with this loan. There was also a confirmation, Christine actually made the confirmation. There's past due taxes, not necessarily because of Willowbrook's deficiency, but there's past due taxes on the property and collection bills will be paid off during the bank's transaction. So we would essentially be loaning the $40,000 to buy the underlying land that the golf course sits upon, and there happens to be a couple structures, which was a lodge and clubhouse and stuff like that. So again, $40,000, 5% interest, 5 years, equivalent of 10 full-time equivalent positions, and loan review debated it and considered to move this to the full board with a recommendation to approve.
Okay. We have resolution number 12.03.2020.01. It's a resolution for authorizing a microenterprise loan to Willowbrook Enterprises, Inc. for $40,000, 6 months interest only first, and then it's amortized 5% for the 60 months thereafter. Motion and a second.
All warning will move it.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion?
Just a quick question, how much land is involved with? How big of a parcel? 10 acres, 20 acres, 37 acres, 37 acres?
Stuart couldn't answer that question. I didn't see it in the packet either. I think John Jennings actually asked that question.
Well, I assume that Christine Powers is 37.
I haven't seen any acreage on it.
Of any coincidence, but.
It's 27 gold.
I mean, there's the golf course. I think there's parcels adjacent to the golf course that have a couple homes on it. It's really more of I'm not sure of all of it, and Christine may know the answer more particularly, but it's more than I can think just the golf course.
That's good.
I I'm looking for that answer at the moment.
No,
Nice-
the
nice
applicant
piece of
council was
property.
asking a question, could not answer that question.
Well, it's not really related to micro enterprise, but in a package, it is. I'm just a little curious as far as values. That's the only question I have.
Okay. On the resolution, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
I,
Opposed? Resolution carries. Governance.
Governance, here again, we met, on Tuesday, same recommendations on the board evaluation here for the IDA here, the LDC. So I would move that, we accept it and, forward the same recommendation to the new CEO at the LDC.
Okay. I have a motion to accept the report, performance report. Do I have a second?
yes,
All in favor, aye?
I,
Opposed? Motion carries. I think at this time, it's, I'd like a motion to go into executive session so that we can, I think we gotta discuss a couple different items financially and
Potential sale, right?
potential sale of
Correct.
our equity. I have a motion in a
for a
second.
motion, Dave,
Yes, I am.
I would move we enter executive session to discuss, potential purchase of real estate, easements relative to the park entrance and financial status of a potential sale of property to others, potential sale lease of properties to the Y and others. And I would invite council to join us. With any members of the LDC.
Oh, which council, we have two.
Well, the question becomes, I'm not sure that our discussion about the solar issues is executive session, Dave?
No, that would not be.
Okay. So I guess, our special counsel for solar probably isn't needed for this executive session. Unless someone disagrees.
He can listen in if he still desires to be bored.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to enter executive session. All in favor, aye?
I,
Opposed? Motion carries.